don't see any attendees online. Oh, it looks like
there they are. They're coming in now.
Okay. We'll give Zoom a minute to catch up since people are slowly rolling in. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our Bay Restoration from a Local Government Perspective webinar. We are so happy to have Roberta Kellam and Andria McClellan with us this evening. We also have two other speakers who may be able to join us, Gerald Garber and Mike Jones. However, they did have some unforeseen things that came up this week in their districts. So we will play it by ear if they're able to join us this evening.
Okay, so I'll just quickly say that this is Andria. I'm the Director of Outreach and Advocacy for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and thank you so much, Roberta and Andria, for joining us this evening. And for those of you who are out there in webinar land, thanks for spending an hour of your evening with us. And I'll just say we pulled this webinar together very quickly because so many times I've heard that it's the most engaging opportunity, right? And it's the most rewarding opportunity from an advocacy perspective, because when you're speaking for your community and things that are happening local, and particularly to your local streams and creeks, and over time you see land use changes in your community, you're speaking from the heart and from a place of knowledge. And I'll just say, as a constituent, I've found that when I go to attend city council meetings in Fredericksburg, I feel a warm welcome, and I feel like I'm sort of doing my civic duty, because I'm sort of eyes and ears, just like all the rest of you are out in your communities. And so that's why we wanted to pull this together. We just felt like that this would be a great learning opportunity. We've had a lot of advocates say, gosh, I'd like to get more involved, but I'm sort of scared. So we thought we'd invite some folks whose background is local government, so that we could hear from them the best way to get involved and when the opportunities are, right? Both from a timing perspective to speak out, but also how to build relationships with your local government folks so that your voice does matter, and you can get and you will feel like you've been heard. So we're going to kick it off tonight with Roberta. Roberta Kellam is an attorney. She's was a planning commissioner, right? She resides from the Eastern Shore. She's a huge birding enthusiast, and she was also on the State Water Control Board. So she has seen a lot of water quality issues come sort of across her docket. And so I'm going to ask her to sort of kick us off this evening.
Well, thank you, Anne. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself with some of my background. My experience with public participation in state and local permitting decisions comes from a variety of perspectives. As an activist personally, as an attorney representing citizens and environmental stakeholders, as an attorney representing the regulated community, and as a decision maker when I served on the State Water Control Board and the Northampton County Planning Commission. I am very passionate about the importance of citizen participation in government decision making. And I think that goes back to growing up in Buffalo, New York, not very far from the Love Canal environmental crisis, which, for those who are not aware, was a school and community that was built upon a chemical waste disposal site. Love Canal was the top local news story every night back in the 70s, which shows how old I am, if not for the citizens who stood up for themselves. We might not have the significant federal and state laws relating to toxic waste generation and disposal, which were inspired by that disaster. However, even to this day, it remains a question why the local school board decided to build a school on what was described in the property deed as a industrial and chemical waste disposal site. To me, this is an example of why it is the local land use decisions that require the most citizen involvement, and why it can also be the most difficult challenge for residents who want to make a difference. I am hoping that tonight we can discuss how local governments can better engage their citizens, along with how citizens can be most effective local advocates. In my local government experience, I consider the comprehensive plan to be the most effective tool for proactive public participation, because it establishes the priority for the community and provides the guidelines and criteria for decision-making. State law requires that a community's comprehensive plan be reviewed every 5 years. There should be ample opportunity for citizen engagement through surveys, workshops, and presentations. And the final plan is, of course, required to undergo a public hearing. The community zoning code should implement the comprehensive plan. A good comprehensive plan should be a handbook for the citizens and the local government. It should not be one of those things that just sits on the shelf collecting dust. Now, I will accept any questions about the comprehensive plan or any other, perspective of my local, any sort of advocacy questions would be fine. And to that, I'm just gonna hand it back over to Anne for the rest of the introductions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Roberta. And so we have City Councilwoman Andria McClellan with us. So Andria is from Norfolk. She's also sits on LGAC, which is the Local Government Advisory Committee for the Bay Program, and has worked with other local government elected leaders to make jurisdictional decisions about how to proceed with Bay restoration. So she's got a tremendous amount of background in this particular topic. And Andrea, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I appreciate it. So I'm happy to be with all of you guys tonight. I was elected in 2016, so I've been about 6.5 years from the City Council. Prior to that, I served for 3 years on the Planning Commission. So I'm going to amplify Roberta's comments about the importance of the comprehensive of the comp plan. I mean, it's so critical. Norfolk's had a lot of plans, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. We've also done a Vision 2100 exercise looking at, where is Norfolk going to be then? But it really comes down to you, the folks who are here tonight who want to learn more. I am so excited that there are people who want to learn how to better advocate at the local level. It is important, and unfortunately, few people do it. And so your voice can be heard and will be heard. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that tonight. And I don't know, Gabby or Ann, I put together some slides. You guys can put that up on the screen, maybe, and sort of talk a little bit about what Norfolk is doing, and then sort of my recommendations on how to engage, and some of the budget process was one of the questions as well. So we can go to the next slide. So one of the things that Norfolk is focused on is creating the coastal community of the future. We are surrounded by water. We are home to the largest naval base in the world, the second or third busiest port on the East Coast, depending on how you look at it. We are on the Chesapeake Bay. Water is really important to us. So our goal is to become the coastal community of the future. So these are some of the things that I just wanted to go through real quickly to give you some insight. Many of you probably know about some of these. We are in the process of wrapping up a $120 million project on what we call the Ohio Creek. It's Ohio Creek Watershed off of the Elizabeth River, which goes into the Chesapeake Bay. And it's an extraordinary project that includes, among other things, and this is, by the way, in 2 historically African-American communities and that have infrastructure that has just not been kept up for years. So this is a really exciting opportunity in terms of stormwater retention. And it also includes what we call a resilience park. So which offers opportunities for our youth and the whole community to get involved in this park, but also has a lot of native landscaping and a lot of amazing stormwater features as well. In addition to that, from that $120 million, we put $5 million aside for an incubator, a resilience incubator called RISE. And if you haven't heard about it, I would welcome you to Google RISE Resilience Incubator. It's an extraordinary organization that is basically cultivating and incubating young companies that have resilience engineering solutions, many of which are focused on water quality. Very exciting stuff there as well. The second bullet point refers to our Army Corps, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Coastal Storm Risk Management Plan. And if you happen to read the Washington Post today, there's a whole article about that. I'm actually quoted in there. It's good, it's challenging, it's not perfect, but it is very much needed. And I should also say about Norfolk, we are second only to New Orleans in terms of flood risk. So we have some major issues that we have to deal with. Because of we're really excited. We got a new start, what they call a new start from the Army Corps, and a federal appropriation of $400 million as a result of latest infrastructure spending plan, which is great. It will get us started on that. It is a mixture of green and gray infrastructure. If you read the Washington Post article, you'll note that there are some concerns that there's not enough green infrastructure in there. And I'm happy to talk with you a little bit more about that as well. Speaking of green infrastructure, we have a green infrastructure plan for the city of Norfolk. It came out in 2018. We have got an incredible group working on green infrastructure here in the city. In that plan, among other things, called to increase our tree canopy, building more living shorelines. We're daylighting a stream in a massive redevelopment project that we're doing right now because, as you know, Mother Nature wants to go where she wants to go, and the water where it typically floods is where she used to be, and we built on. So we're working on that as well. The other thing I would note in our stormwater area, we've done a lot with SLAF, the Stormwater Local Assistance Funding, that many of you probably are familiar with. Over the course since 2014, we have we've used about $12.5 million grants from SLAF, the Clean Water Revolving Fund. We've used 21 million, excuse me. So 12.5 million in SLAF grants and 21 million in Clean Water Revolving Loan funds. And the city's matched 8 million. These are all projects to do with our green infrastructure projects there. So Justin Schaefer, who's our guy there, is absolutely amazing and has done a great job. Our zoning code. Who knew zoning codes could be so interesting and exciting? But ours is. We rewrote our zoning code and adopted it in 2019. It's considered one of the most resilient zoning codes in the country. And we really focus, among other things, on basically giving points, added benefits to builders if they are going to use native plantings or they have more stormwater retention on site. And then just generally, lastly, most importantly to this conversation, our citizen opportunities. We have a variety of things related to water quality in the city of Norfolk, including a program called Retain Your Rain. And we're trying to get citizens to think about being more sponge-like and keeping stormwater on their properties and filtering it out. So we actually have an app. If you want to Google Norfolk Retain Your Rain, it helps people understand what it looks like from stormwater. And we actually have grants for our various civic leagues to encourage them to plant various community gardens to help with stormwater. We have a tree commission, we have the Norfolk Environmental Commission, we have a wetlands board, and our Keep Norfolk Beautiful staff is just absolutely phenomenal. They are regularly cleaning up efforts on the bay and throughout the city, and we do regular tree giveaways as well. So we'll go to the next slide. This is why you guys are here. How to get the ear of your elected official. I'm not sure that I'm going to tell anybody anything that's groundbreaking or earth-shattering here, but you know, the first, it's all about relationships. So I really encourage you to reach out to your elected officials. send them an email, set up a meeting to introduce yourself. And quite honestly, don't limit yourself just to the electeds, because the people who really know and who really do are the staff. So they're also a great resource and probably a good idea to set up informational meetings with them as well. I want to give a shout out to an amazing email that I received just today, and she is on here. Greta, I'm going to mispronounce this, Lindemann, who emailed me to advocate on SLAF funding, on oysters, on Community Flood Preparedness Fund. That's what you need to do. I want to hear from my folks. I don't hear from a lot of folks. I represent about 125,000 people, and I answer all my own emails. So I don't want too many emails, but I don't hear from that many folks. I have office hours. I meet folks at the local coffee shop. Definitely establish that relationship there. Please be our subject matter experts. We are not experts in everything, particularly as it relates to bay restoration. We need your help. And then you'll note my sub-bullet: share info, but not too much info. If I am flooded, no pun intended, with so much information in an email, I just don't have the time to really go through all of it. So I would just say, just make sure that you measure out the information as you're going, and not too much in one email, because it's just, we just don't have the time to handle everything. I would say, I think for the most part, most city council members, commissioners are part-time. I'm part-time. So you just want to recognize that. And so as you're talking with folks, we want to hear from you, but also be realistic about time expectations. Of course, boards and commissions, great opportunity for citizens to get involved. I would suggest, if you're interested in a board and commission, I know in the city of Norfolk, you put an application in online. Always get in touch with your elected officials, your city council members or your supervisors, and let them know about your interests, but also reach out to the chair or the vice chair of those organizations, because oftentimes what we do as a council is we look for the recommendations from the chair for those openings. Attend the public meetings, of course, or watch the recordings afterwards. Don't limit yourself to your municipality. There are a lot of regional opportunities that are very important as well. So go to the planning district commissions, and oftentimes they have amazing work groups as well, specifically to water quality. The next thing, volunteer. I always tell my kids and others, help others before you need their help. So if you can go help somebody, an elected official, on an event that they're hosting, you are going to have more of an opportunity to develop a relationship, and they're going to be there in your corner probably when you need your help as well. And the last is, I host an event called Engage Norfolk. We have it every year. It's about 500 to 1,000 people. We have over 100 organizations present. It's the whole idea of getting involved in your community. You can learn more if you go to engagenorfolk.org. Okay, next slide. And the last one. I was asked to talk a little bit about the budget process. So what I often have seen since I've been on council is people will go to the public hearing right before we adopt the budget. And it is a public hearing, and that's really important. But here's and I'm jumping to the second bullet here, but here's what you need to know. The time to talk to your elected official about the budget is about 6 months before we actually present in the public hearing. If you think of it like baking a cake, right? The cake is basically baked by the time you get to the public hearing. There's some tweaks here or there around the edges, but you want to be there when we're measuring the ingredients for the cake. And that's typically 6 months in advance. So as it relates to Norfolk, we are presented the budget draft to the city council in March. We have several meetings about it, and we have a public hearing, and we vote on it in May, and it becomes effective July 1st. Working backwards, that means right now, people should be talking to me about and advocating for what goes in our budget. So that is something that people don't really understand, but I think it's really critical as well. The other thing is CIPs, capital improvement plan, our capital projects, those are multi-year in nature. So if you're looking for a big stormwater project, that probably will get extended over several years as well. I'll go back to the first bullet. Our budget documents are all online. they're very interesting and very telling. I highly encourage you to go take a look at the budget for your city or your county. They really tell you a lot about the municipality's priorities, but recognize a budget includes a general fund, the capital, the CIP funds that I told you about, as well as the enterprise funds. Those are the entities or the departments where they actually have specific taxes to help to fund them. Stormwater is one of them. Also, when don't limit yourself to how we're spending the money. Also take a look at how we're receiving the money. Where are those revenues coming from? And that's really critical as well, because we can only spend what we bring in. And so it's important to understand that. And then lastly, as an advocate, I would just say, again, be that subject matter expert. Help your elected official. Do you know where other sources of funding are? Can you help identify grant opportunities? Can you identify public-private partnerships? That's misspelled, my apologies. And also, recognize that the way we typically are going to get things done at the local level is by also having state and federal dollars. So we sort of have to layer things there. So I've talked quite a bit. I will stop now. The last slide just says thank you and my contact information. Yeah, I think we can have a really robust conversation from here, Roberta. Sorry, I was a little long-winded there, but hopefully that was helpful for folks.
That was so good. Thank you so much. And apologies that nobody can see me today. It's just the weirdest thing. I've never had a problem with people seeing me on Zoom, and you would just see a blank screen. So that's why you've got my smiling face with the rain jacket. That was from Greece, but I guess that doesn't matter. So Roberta, a quick follow-up question for you. And it's really about the comp plan. And I'll phrase it this way. I've heard some planning commission members say that the comp plan is not something that we necessarily have to follow, right, when they make zoning decisions. And how do you navigate that? If there's something that you see that there's a new that a piece of property is being rezoned, maybe it's an ag and it's going to go to commercial, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is right next door to me, and I'm not sure that I want this to be commercial. And it's in an area where that whole swath is supposed to be part of an ag overlay district, for instance. What, how do you advocate in that scenario?
Well, I'd like to suggest that actually, the local government decisions, the ultimate decision that's made from the decision maker. So you have the planning commission that's going to review it and make a recommendation. And they have to have an evidence-based decision. So they have to support their decision, with a justification. So especially if it's not in compliance with the comprehensive plan, what I have seen done is they make an amendment to the comprehensive plan at the time that they make their decision. So, that's when you get into you're into what would be more of a controversial project, it sounds like. If it's not in compliance with the comprehensive plan, that means it's really doesn't meet the community's vision, and it's likely to have a lot more opposition to it. In here on the Eastern Shore, we've had situations like that where I guess because it's very rural here, people are more involved because we have less to do maybe. But it's organize your neighbors, get a petition going. I mean, we've had situations where we had signs made. It can get, I guess this is where you get into a situation where you've spoken to your elected official over and over again. you're not getting the feeling that things are going your way. I'm not going to say that you're going to win. I mean, at a certain point you have, if the decision doesn't go your way, you do maybe need to end up getting a lawyer. But like recently we had a situation here where the local government, the elected officials really knew, they saw that it was very controversial, and they did have meetings with the various stakeholders, and we were able to come up with sort of compromise conditions on the approval that made it, better or more acceptable. So, I think to Andrea's point about building relationships, if you don't want to be in a situation where you're reacting and you haven't built relationships and you don't know what to do. And that's why I'm suggesting being proactive, participating. I thought Andrea's, all of her suggestions were just great as far as, become an expert, be the expert, like bring information to the planning commission. And I know that like a council, a board of supervisors or a city council, they're going to be, they're very overloaded with their agenda. It's very broad, but your planning commission does have, their focus right on the land use that is impacting water quality. That's maybe where you want to focus first. And they usually, I know we always did have like a part of the agenda that was open to the public as far as whatever matters from the public somebody wanted to bring forward.
Roberta, it's interesting. So I just came from LGAC, the Local Government Advisory Committee meeting from Chesapeake Bay program last week. And we often talk about elected officials, and we actually have modules on training elected officials about water quality, because so many don't understand this. And I'm realizing what we need to do is then expand that to our planning commissions, because that is not an area that we've focused on. And I think that's a really critical component for sure. When I think of the planning commission, I think they're the land use folks. By the time it gets to your board of supervisors or city council, that's the political decision, right? And so that is, that's a difference. And quite honestly, I find more of our rural communities have a better understanding of water issues than our larger, more urban areas, just because in areas like a city like Norfolk or, more urban, larger areas, we have staff that does it. So we don't have to specifically know it. And we don't. I mean, most of my colleagues wouldn't know what TMDL stands for, or BMP, or, they don't WIP, like, what's that?
Right. Yeah.
Watershed improvement plan. Why is 2025 important? Well, because we have to meet these goals. They don't get those things. And so we don't really understand those. I would also say, this is again, one of those, like, of course, this makes sense. If you are an individual and you have an issue and you come to me, I will listen to you. But if there are 30 of you who come to me, I will listen more. Here's what I don't like. Petitions don't really mean a whole lot to me. Like, you get a bunch of names. It is much more effective, I think, if you're advocating, to have individuals send emails. Also, I don't like those form emails where everybody sends the same information, because I stopped reading them, because I just know somebody has just put in there, it's auto-generated. So having something that is specific is also important. And the last thing that I would say is, when somebody sends an email to all of the council members, it's easy just to ignore it. If you want to advocate, send individual emails to each council member or each supervisor, because then you can't ignore it. Those are my little tips there. So it's really it's really helpful and really, really important. And so saying I have, 50 people have signed this petition, it's not nearly as effective as 50 people sending me individual emails.
Right.
So,
And
don't
I
know
think
if you
that is a difference in a rural community, because if you have a petition of 50 people and that supervisor looks at those names and says, oh, he's on there. Oh, they're on. It's a little, it's
you would
not
know
like
the names in a city
They
of
know-
250,000, we would know the names.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I love the fact that we have both sort of an urban and rural community represented here, because I do think, the Bay and the Watershed, it's much different areas. We talk about this at LGAC all the time, agricultural issues versus, some of the issues that we see in our urban cities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked the question about the Dillon rule.
Yes, so Stuart asked, what about zoning limits due to the Dillon rule? In building, state codes are very weak. Our county tries incentives, but it's not enough to get very much electrification. What do you have to say to that?
It's so hard to get changes into the state building code. We've been trying for years to try and address resilience there. And it's just, it's really, really difficult. So yeah, I mean, that is the big question, local authority versus state. And so we have more restrictive zoning code at the local level than what is required by the state. And our local home builders association was not happy with us. I mean, I think the article that ran after the city council vote, when we adopted ours in 2018 or 2019, was, after a terse conversation between Councilwoman McClellan and the Tidewater Builders Association, because I just pushed back. I mean, they were just saying, well, it's gonna cost more to build homes in Norfolk, and I said, it is, but they're going to be more resilient, and they're going to the flood insurance costs are going to be less, and these are going to be homes that are going to be able to survive for longer than 20 years. So I didn't make any friends in the Builders Association that night, but it was the right thing. But Dillon rule, I don't know, Roberta, do you want to talk? What has been your experience on the shore?
Oh, well, I came from New York, which has home rule, not Dillon rule. So I came here and I was like, why is everything opposite? It's very difficult. I mean, Virginia is the only state still with the Dillon rules.
Fully with, I think there's one or two that fully Dillon rule. Some people have a combination of Dillon rule and home rule.
Yeah, and it's I guess philosophically that's just a bigger question, but I mean,
maybe we should talk. I shouldn't assume that everybody on this knows what the Dillon rule is. So
I was going to say, yeah, let's take a step back and explain what.
So Dillon is a judge from the late 1800s in Iowa, I think it was, and it was a railroad case. But essentially, it's I call it the Mother May I rule. And basically the Virginia General Assembly, the state legislators, have to give express permission to tax or to create a law at the municipal level. So, for example, until recently, if you wanted to, in your municipality, if your legislators wanted to put a fee or a tax on plastic bags, single-use plastic bags, because we know they're terrible for the environment, they cause flooding, etc. You couldn't do that until a few years ago, until the state legislature passed a law saying you could do this. Now it's permissive. So now the localities can do that. But that's the Dillon rule. And so it's not, there's also this tension between what we can do versus in the state building code. And Stuart, I'm embarrassed to say, I don't know why we are able to do more restrictive policy in Norfolk versus over the state code, because that would suggest we couldn't because of the Dillon rule. And I don't know the answer to that one. Roberta, do you know?
I don't. No, I don't.
But that's what the Dillon rule is. And and the only institution who can change the Dillon rule are the state legislators who have all the power because of the Dillon rule. So do you think they want to change it? They don't.
I'm gonna look up, later after we're done, what the impact of the Dillon rule is on the building code for Virginia,
Yeah.
because I just don't know.
I know that there is talk to take some control away from localities to place it in state hands as it relates to, for example, affordable housing. The governor wants to lessen the ability of localities to provide requirements related to affordable housing. I think the argument is we're making it too restrictive. Zoning codes are just sort of, the argument has been made that zoning codes just make it too difficult. We shouldn't have zoning codes. So anyway.
We also have a question from one of our listeners, Kit Norland. So I'm going to give her permission to speak so that she can ask her question. And
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Andria and Roberta. I'm from ground zero of Missing Middle here in Arlington. It's a very big aspiration, and it's really important, and we all recognize the need for more affordable housing. And yet what the county has thus far provided is it's not a plan. It's a set of suggestions that do not meet what the realities of the market. So in terms of Missing Middle, it really feels like the developers are in a very strong position here. And I just wonder what thoughts you have on how normal residents of this area can help point out that we need better planning. If you're going to have Missing Middle, tell us how you're going to accommodate the traffic and the parking and the school enrollment and the environmental impacts. So I really welcome your thoughts on where this really good goal, but that is not currently based in very good planning. Appreciate it, lady.
Yeah, so Roberta, you probably don't have a Missing Middle discussion happening on the shore, I'm guessing. We should define what Missing Middle is.
I mean, we don't have affordable housing, I guess, is our problem because of the tourism market. Is everybody's converting their extra house or room to short-term rentals.
Yeah.
So we're missing, we don't have workforce housing. Is that the Missing Middle?
It is and it isn't. It's really a density issue. So
okay.
And Kit, help me understand if I get this wrong, but the way we define it in Norfolk, you think about high density multifamily, and then you have single family homes. The Missing Middle is the area in between, which would be, I live in Ghent in Norfolk. So I live in a single family home that's, pretty large, 5,000 square feet. And 2 doors down from me, there is a 10-unit apartment complex. And then on the other block, there's what we call a 6-pack, which is 6 people, right? So it's that sort of idea of something that's in between. And that's how we define it. We actually have a Missing Middle in Norfolk, Kit, and I'd be happy to send you some links about it. We actually have, from planning, we have a plan book, a design book on Missing Middle architecture and plans to try and jumpstart this, because it does, unlike Arlington, Norfolk is obviously, we have neighborhoods that are a lot older. So we have some of this already. So Kit, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's going on in Arlington.
Oh, well, and yeah, no, that's super, Andrea, and I love that you have these various accommodations for things, but what they're proposing that could be voted on, and I don't want to keep this too long, on as early as November 15th, is to upzone the entire county, which is of course the smallest county in the US, but it's 26 square miles. But in the context of climate change and the crises that we are facing with urban heat island effect and flooding and all that, is it really wise in the stroke of a pen as early as November to say, have at it, just developers up zone us, do it to 8 plexes, do it, we don't care. But it will impact the zoning requirements for this Dillon Rule state, which now has 20% canopy in 20 years for single family homes. That will be halved in the stroke of a pen to 10% because of all this, the implications of all this upzoning. So there's no calibration here. There's no experimentation. There's just kind of a prospect of, let's just go for it. And it just seems uninformed. And again, in the context of the climate crisis, it is not doing this environment a great service, which we are all here to care about.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying and I agree. And obviously I think trees are, we all need more trees, right? And in Norfolk, in an urban area, we struggle with tree canopy as well. But from what I understand as well, I mean, density in housing is also a very positive thing from the environment as well. That is, all of the, and I'm not an expert, but all the books that I have read suggest that density is actually a good thing as it relates to the environment.
No, that's exactly right, Andrea. But what's different about this is that in the stroke of a pen, it's not just metro corridors and density near transportation, but across the county. It is really unthought through. They cannot answer specific questions about implications from everything from school enrollment.
It's just a broad stroke.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it incrementally. Let's do it thoughtfully. Let's really plan it.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with you there. And we have certain areas where we are focused on the missing middle and other areas where we're not, because it's just not gonna, just like short-term rentals, to Roberta's point, we have areas in the city where we have said short-term rentals are allowed by right if it's 3 bedrooms or less, or they have to get a conditional use permit. In other parts of the city, they're not allowed at all. So we've tried to be very thoughtful. So I would agree with you, Kit, that I think from typically just to go citywide on a plan or zoning it's challenging. So I don't know enough about what's happening there, but I see your point, which is maybe we could do this incrementally, and that might be a smarter way about it.
Yeah, no, I think we all agree there has been a total disgrace.
So let me tell you, the other thing that I would tell you is, having been on the receiving side of people who are really angry about things, when people scream at me and shout at me, and fortunately it's not happened very often, there's so many school board members who've had to deal with this over the past year, but I would just say shouting, calling me bad names and nasty stuff on the internet, tweets, I don't think that changes anybody's mind. I just don't think it works. And so I'm not suggesting that's happening in Arlington, by the way. I don't think it is, but I'm just saying it just spurred on me. I'm like, it might make you feel good to tweet out something nasty about somebody. And I've done it once or twice myself, but it doesn't change your mind. If you're really trying to change the hearts and minds of your elected official, you have to be willing to sit down and have a conversation and come up with some sort of compromise.
Totally agree. And I spoke recently with my delegate, and he used the word toxic, and I did not, but I totally hear you. It has to be a real relationship and discussion. Amen.
And I'm just so sad that our country seems to be going so far away from that.
It seems like what Andria had suggested before about being an expert and, like providing some I guess, analysis to the county and suggesting an alternative that it might gain a little traction if it's, I guess, presented individually to the board members and in a respectful way. And I mean, it just sounds like the strategy of doing it incrementally just makes a lot of sense. So it would be a good way to have a compromise.
Yes, amen, ladies, and I don't want to do more, but the Forestry and Natural Resources Commission, the Arlington Tree Action Group, even Eco Action, they've all exactly tried to lay out an incremental and reasonable, and let's just have a little bit more planning before doing a blanket assertion. So yes, all in, ladies, thank you.
And I just put in the chat, I don't know if you guys can see it, our missing middle pattern book for the city of Norfolk for what it's worth. So if anybody's interested.
Excellent. It's so good. Andrew, I'm going to ask you a question because you alluded to it just a second ago when you were talking about some local ordinances, and that was that the General Assembly gave localities the ability to pass ordinances for a 5-cent, to collect a 5-cent fee for plastic bags. And we've got some folks from Norfolk in the audience tonight. And so give them some feedback as to how would you ask them to go about advocating in favor of that plastic bag fee?
Well, so I'm one of 8 votes. I can't believe that we haven't passed that in Norfolk, of all places. So I think, yes, you need, I would vote for it tomorrow, but, oh, I should tell you in Norfolk also, we have this really weird rule where I can't, we don't follow Robert's Rules of Order. So I don't sponsor legislation. I can't sponsor legislation. The only way something gets on the agenda to be voted on at a city council meeting is the mayor and the vice mayor put it on the agenda.
That is so different from everybody else's. I mean, Roberta, have you ever heard of that?
Very different. And
Okay.
so I can't say, hey, let's bring it to a vote. It doesn't go to a vote because it doesn't get on the agenda. So you really have to get, you need more than one person in the city of Norfolk. Now that may be different elsewhere, but so I would love to see us do that. I'd love to see us do a lot of other things. But we have not been able to get enough support for this at this point. And elections unfortunately get involved with this. And we have municipal elections happening in the city this November, and some people don't want to take votes at the moment. So some of it's, I hate to say it, but some of it's the timing of when this legislation gets introduced. So, past November 8th, we might be in a better position to introduce some of these things on the agenda. I'm also, well, I won't go through some of my other challenges, but I think that in Virginia Beach, it almost went through. They had a whole study on it and they ultimately decided not to. One of the other challenges specific to the plastic bag fee, I'll call it, is that there are rightful concerns about inflation. And, I guess a 5-cent plastic bag tax is going to really change somebody's grocery bill. I don't understand that. I mean, the way that the way the legislation works is that the money goes back to the municipality, and they're also supposed to provide reusable bags for people who are in underserved communities. And so, I mean, I could make the argument all day long, but sometimes I'm just, it's but so that's why I do need, by the way, that's why it's really important for citizen advocates to be there, because I can make the case, but I need a, sort of a groundswell of folks beyond me who can help me to advocate with my colleagues as well. So stay tuned. I think we might be able to get something done after November 8th. But that is part of the problem for sure. Roberta, do you guys have this on the shore? Has anybody been successful?
No, it's not even discussed. Yeah.
So Roberta, like in a small, well, you've got Accomack and Northampton County as the jurisdictions, but for those two localities, how would you, for folks who are on the phone, how would you encourage them to advocate for the plastic bag fee with their board of supervisors?
Well, I think what, to Andrew's point, that having a lot of people show up for a board of supervisors meeting and speak on an issue, and meet with, you know, your district supervisor. You know, I think when something is, I would say, not real popular or somewhat controversial, you know, just by nature, the supervisors are going to want to see the support from people. You know, that's going to be important to get people actually in the room. And that's, you know, that's one of the things about, and I think one of the things that makes it so difficult, really, with public involvement is that people have to go to the meetings. I mean, it's not easy with everybody's schedules and how busy people are. You know, to just get even just like a core group of people to go to every planning commission meeting and every board of supervisors meeting. It's a huge commitment, you know, no doubt about it. So, and it makes more of an impact than emails and letters and petitions. It's hard to look at people's, you know, faces, and especially because we're a small community, so everybody knows each other. So yeah, I guess I just think it's really a commitment of time that you have to be dedicated to. So
Thank you.
I also think it's important that getting involved with elections. I mean, not to be, I'm not in a partisan perspective here, but you know, it's important to think about who you're supporting and how you're supporting, and also making sure that we have a bench and that we have sort of succession planning as well, so that, you know, maybe it's not you, but, you know, helping to find people in your community who might be willing to step up. And when the time is right, that there's a base of support there. I mean, these are, I ran against a 16-year incumbent, and I was told to wait my turn. I was told there was no way in hell I'd win. This is not how it's done. And that we pick a businessman and we support him. Nice use of pronouns. And, you know, I beat him in 19 of 23 precincts, but it was because I had, you know, been on the planning commission, I'd worked in the community, et cetera, but I worked really hard and I had a great group of folks. But it's so critical to, you know, everybody focuses on federal elections and then maybe state elections. And by the time it gets to the local elections, people don't really care. They don't pay attention and they don't show up to vote. And so I would just say, you know, God love you guys for putting this on, because it's your local elected officials who most people don't even know, who really make a difference in your daily lives. So that's completely self-serving as a local elected official, but it's important. And so I really appreciate you guys having this forum.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, Andrea. And we often encourage our advocates to try and form relationships with their local elected leaders outside of when, you know, important votes are happening. So what would you suggest is the best way to start forming that relationship?
You know, send an email, ask somebody to go to coffee, invite them to the Civic League. If you have an advocacy group or a small group of folks who, you know, a group of friends who get together and deal, any of those things, all the above. You know, some might be more receptive than others. Persistence pays off. You know, if you can't if you're not making inroads with that individual, figure out somebody, maybe a mutual friend that you know, to provide the introduction. So it's not just a complete cold call. That helps as well. I find, to Roberta's point, going to the meeting, and then as the meeting's over, introduce yourself. It's hard to say no when it's in person. Now, if you call my cell phone and leave me a voicemail message, I very well may never call you back, because I'm not good at listening to my voicemail messages. So each person is different. So figure out what their communication style is. Do they prefer text? Do they prefer email? Do they prefer a voice, call? Ask if they have do they have an assistant? Do they prefer scheduling that way? I mean, all of those things. Another pet peeve of mine, but I'm on social media. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, which is great. But sometimes people will send me exhaustive messages, direct messages through those platforms that need to be answered by city staff. And I can't just forward an email to city staff. So sometimes it's good to say, hey, listen, I'd like to talk to you about something. Can I send you an email? As opposed to putting it all in expansive detail in a Facebook post. Oh, I hate to be tagged in Facebook posts about issues as well. That's the other thing. It's a pet peeve of mine. Just send me an email, Debbie. I don't know, Roberta, what do you think?
I think you covered it, Andrea.
I'm really glad to hear your pet peeves. So just so that Roberta doesn't have to do homework and dig into this question about Norfolk and how much, it has, we've got Delegate Vivian Watts, who's up in Northern Virginia on the, and I think she may have the answer to your question. I think she's right. So Delegate Watts, you want to share your answer?
Well, again, not definitive, but my assumption is that Norfolk, in its city charter, which cities can have that specific powers in their charter, which does have to be approved by the General Assembly under the Dillon Rule, but you may have a very specific provision in your charter that allows you to take the kind of action in zonings that you were wondering why someone else doesn't. So in a way, that's good news and bad news. Your city charter is what sets how the meetings are conducted. I've spent all my time with a county form of government where we don't have a separate executive, and the chairman of the board really doesn't have any extraordinary powers. Arlington, with its county form, is one of those areas where, well, I really should say we have one city in Northern Virginia, and that of major size, and that's Alexandria. And anytime they come for a charter revision, I can assure you that throughout the state, many, many interests are very concerned about what those liberals in Northern Virginia are going to do in the charter. So it's extremely hard to get their changes through in that setting. So all of these pluses and minuses, ideally, I'd love to sit and reconstruct all of the structure, but it is very interesting in government how you play off the laws just because of that, especially when you're dealing with region-wide problems that need to have a more comprehensive, coordinated approach.
Well, Delegate Watts, I'm so honored that you're on this. I think you're one of the smartest folks up in the General Assembly. So thank you for weighing in there for sure. And your last point about the regional piece is really important. And I think that's important to touch on too. I mentioned it briefly in my bullets, but we think about the Bay, it's a watershed issue, right? And so yes, each individual locality has a piece to play, but we struggle sometimes with our regional, for lack of a better term, legislation, that's not the right word, but so I'm chair of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, and I'm proud of some of the work that we've done to come together to address some of our flooding issues, but so much more needs to happen. And if you think about what the General Assembly does and the federal government does to affect transportation issues, we have regional transportation planning organizations, TPOs. We're given and provided regional planning dollars for transportation, but we're not provided regional planning dollars for issues of water quality or water quantity, which are really regional in nature. That's probably more of a federal issue than it is a state issue, but that's one of the struggles that we have here because,
Well,
you know,
I will just add to what you're saying, Andrea, that the regional transportation structure originated in Northern Virginia, and it was 10, 15 years in being worked through before it was finally adopted in 2013. And because of all of that pre-work, where you had an authority for transportation planning that had no money to it, whereas your planning district tends to do more in transportation than ours ever did. But because of all of that pre-work, once the dike was breached and regional transportation came in, then there was a model for the Hampton Roads area, and then for Richmond, and now others are also looking for it. Again, making sure that if you have revenue raising powers, that you have a great deal of oversight and procedures to make sure of how this major infrastructure is planned and executed.
yeah, no, I think that's, I mean, that's just, it's the recipe for all of this, right? You know, we live in a world now where we expect instant gratification, but the fact of the matter is so much of this takes years, decades to really affect change. And it's that advocacy, it's that relationship building that it just means being persistent. To Roberta's points earlier, you know, it's a bit of a slog, but it is worth it. And ultimately it often does pay off. And, you know, and ultimately as well, those incremental steps, which, you know, some of our activist community hates incrementalism, right? They hate that they just want everything now, but it is that those incremental steps that ultimately pay off into moving things. So.
And you know, we're standing on the shoulders of people who did this before us, and you know, the work that went into getting the Clean Water Act passed, and you know, these major environmental legislations, federal laws, and your state laws, and I mean, it is worth it, and it is hard, and if you want to, you know, make a difference, it sometimes can feel like a little bit of a thankless effort, but you know, you have to, you look back and you say, wow, we actually made a difference. You know, I can say that pretty much across the board in things that I've worked on, I have seen citizen participation makes a difference. It makes a better decision-making outcome. You know, we just have to do it. And we're with you. I guess I'm with every one of you in spirit who is, you know, making the effort.
If I may add, in the spirit of being effective lobbyists, you so echo what I came up with some years ago when I had to do a speech and I've got to do something. And basically you're reflecting the structure, because I started out all of my work, women didn't run for office for, oh heavens no. So I had 15 years of citizen work at the local level, then spent some time as a congressional aide and am now in the legislature and have been in the cabinet. Having said all of that, here's my perspective, that you are reflecting exactly what I found, that at the local level, it's all about numbers, that the local representative thinks they know their district and you have to prove otherwise. On the federal level, like the Clean Air Act and other major changes, Clean Water Act, it's all about what I knew as Gucci Gulch. It's all about the details in the markup that you really have to follow with great tenacity, all of the details, and know that an amendment on line 523, what it will do. On the state level in Virginia, because we have one of the shortest sessions in the nation, it really is about trust building. Now, obviously, all of these things go across levels, but it's exactly what you were saying about contact your elected official and work with them to build that trust as a good source of information. And I have found that particularly so. I will conclude by saying, I don't do Twitters and tweets and Facebook and all that, because I operate in paragraphs. And I respond to that level of information, either on the ground information or the technical information. So I'm an email person, but that also reflects the nature of what type of action and how you influence that action happens at all three levels.
So glad you're here. That was, yes.
I know, that was perfect. Yeah, Delegate Watts came out for Clean the Bay Day, and we were shoulder to shoulder with our trash bags. So she was. She did a great
And Northern
job.
Virginia is happy. I haven't received no complaints about the trash bags, but we're counties, so we don't have the problem you have of having it be initiated by the executive of your city government rather than being able to just make the motion as a county representative. But I just haven't had pushback at all, and it has significantly cut down on the number of these plastic bags in circulation.
So I just to clarify, we don't have a strong mayor form of government in Norfolk.
Okay.
We do have a city manager. It is not strong mayor in name, but it is in practice to some extent. And that is a bit of a challenge. So but yes, it's this plastic bag thing is such a conundrum for sure. Delegate Watts, can I ask the question? I made a comment earlier about the budget process and when to talk to your elected officials. Would you say that it's similar at the state level in terms of, folks who come up to the General Assembly in January, February? It's really the time to talk to your elected officials is probably over the summer or in the fall.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And also our deadline for requesting legislation is essentially December 1st. So if you want legislation drafted, now is the time to do it. The Senate has a little bit more latitude than the House does, but it really needs to be done now. And with the budget, exactly what you said, with this difference that disturbs me, which is why I am holding forth to mention it, and that is that increasingly, however, budget language is inserted in the process. And since the budget is the very last bill that is passed, whatever is in the budget, notwithstanding code section it will read, it will be the law until the next budget is approved. So there's a tremendous amount of legislation that goes on in the budget, which is unfortunate because it does not have the degree of public input or legislative debate.
Yeah, we legislate through the budget now, it seems.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure.
I think this has been just a really wonderful discussion, and Delegate Watts, I'm so happy that you were able to join us. We'll close this in just a second, but Greta Lindemann, who you said, Andrea, reached out to you, but I'd like to be able to just broach this, and especially since we've got Delegate Watts on the line, which is, what are the opportunities, or is there an opportunity to change from Virginia, from a home rule to, from a Dillon rule to a home rule state? And is that a change to the Constitution? Has somebody already introduced that as a bill in the past? I'm just curious what the sort of history of, because I'll just say, frequently we will hear from local governments that they'll say, particularly around tree canopy ordinances, we can't do that, our hands are tied, and we know what the state code says, and we understand that. So just curious, has that ever been introduced as a bill, Delegate Watts?
It has been, although it never went anywhere, so I can't give you chapter and verse. I know the League of Women Voters has had it as a position forever. It doesn't go anywhere. One reason being that there are counties, and now I happen to know this for other reasons, 6 of the 10 largest jurisdictions in Virginia are counties, not cities. And so to the degree that you don't have the checks and balances of legislative, executive within local government, there is even more concern then amongst particularly things like the building industry in a very strong property rights state in Virginia about what happens on the local level. So they really like the check of the state legislature. I will observe that Arlington, in my experience, going all the way back to my citizen years, was their county attorneys were much more adventuresome than Fairfax's were. And they always, my impression from the outside was, we'll go ahead and do it. And maybe somebody will tell us that we can't, and we'll ask forgiveness, but by that time it'll be up and running and it'll be easier to shape legislation anyway. Versus I, on a number of issues, have experienced in Fairfax a much more conservative approach of, oh, we've got to get permission before we can do that. So there's also an awful lot of latitude and wiggle room that happens within the Dillon rule. And then finally, I will say that there are there's also a strong tradition of consistency throughout Virginia. We're not going from one jurisdiction to the other and having the rules change, which also is an element in the resistance to just doing away with the Dillon rule.
That last argument is what I hear most frequently, although, I understand that, but I could make a pretty clear argument that Norfolk is going to be a lot different than Northampton County.
Yes.
So it's just it's a bit of a challenge for sure, but so excited that you were on today. That was a really nice treat.
Well, I signed on because and also my husband's out of town, but it was something that I did not know that much about, and I'm very glad that I got the perspective that comes from your areas, and it's been very enlightening. Thank you.
Well, I guess with that, we don't have any more questions, and you guys have just done really an amazing job. Thank you so much. I've written down so many notes. Be proactive, make relationships, build those relationships over time, be patient. Just don't expect an immediate response to your request. Recognize that your local leaders are usually part-time, right? And I also love the be short and sweet message that you guys have got really busy, and you need somebody to just be the subject matter expert, but to be concise about it and to share that, to share what's really needed to help you frame your decision. So just again, thank you both, Roberta and Andrea, and Delegate Watts for sharing your expertise with our audience tonight. We so much appreciate your time. And with that, we'll close the evening. But just again, thank you. We did record this, and we will share it with everybody who registered, and it'll be up on our website in the next couple of days, so that everybody's got the opportunity to listen and hear the wisdom that you shared tonight.
Thanks so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
All right.
Anne and Gabby and Delegate Watts.
All right.
And Andrea.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night.